Hello YouTube, it's Shadow Hero 90, welcoming you to the 5th season of Sexism in Movies and TV. Now, there are many reasons as to why I do this review show. One of which is the portrayal of men in the media is downright horrific. It's an insult. It's why most kids think their dads are idiots. But when it comes to women, they get the get out of horrible portrayal free card. And although I do review a lot of shows and movies that are aimed at a mature adult audience, most of what I review is aimed at a young audience. And yes, I kind of do blame shows like Adventure Time and Loud House and the bulk of what usually appears on this show as being the reason that teenage boys have such low self-esteem. Which is actually kind of true when you think about it from a psychological perspective. When every single portrayal, well, almost every single portrayal of men and boys on TV and in movies is negative, of course these teenage boys, when they first hit puberty, are going to have horrible self-esteem. So, in that regard, I know that I have a noble cause when I rip apart these televised pieces of shit. So anyways, on with the review.
In episode 151 of Dragon Ball, Chi-Chi praises Goku, saying that he's the best in the world. And when she's asked whether or not she wants to be a good wife to Goku, she says she wants to be the best wife in the whole world. And it takes her less than a year to fuck it up. In this episode of Sexism in Movies and TV, I'm going to be ripping apart the most hated character in the Dragon Ball franchise, Chi-Chi. And it is kind of weird that she's this hated because she's not written as a villain and isn't supposed to be one. If you're familiar with this show, you're probably aware that this is going to be a bitch monster segment. And this isn't really an opinion or something I'm pulling out of my ass. This is actually the opinion of a lot of people in the Dragon Ball community. And since Chi-Chi got next to no screen time in the original Dragon Ball up until the final season, I'm mostly going to be going over her appearances in Dragon Ball Z, GT, and most recently Dragon Ball Super. Now, with that out of the way, Let's rip this bitch a new one. In Dragon Ball Z episode 150, Chi-Chi essentially does give Krillin the idea to fly out and get the remote control from Bulma to shut off the androids, which Krillin smashes, by the way. But when she does it, she talks to them like they're all a bunch of muscle-headed retards with no intelligence whatsoever. And it kind of shows deep down how very little she respects both Goku, his teacher, and his friends. And at one point in the Cell Games saga, I can't remember which episode, she actually has the goal to call the Z Fighters a gang. Even though they were the ones who end up defeating Cell at the end, it's almost as if Chi-Chi's brain hears the word fight and is instantly linking it to stereotypical violence that rises up for no reason and is perpetrated by a mindless brute. She apparently also thinks the same thing when she hears the word training. Because, I mean, it's like she doesn't know how much of a threat guys like Cell, Super Boo, and Beerus were, or could have turned out to be, had Goku and Gohan not stuck to their training regimen. She comes off as an idiot who thinks good grades are everything, even at the cost of the planet. Thinking that if Gohan stayed at home studying, and Cell hypothetically kills Goku, then blows up the Earth, then somehow Gohan would still get a high-paying job, even though everyone on Earth was killed. And that is a high level of stupid. That is Peggy Hill level stupid, in fact. Now that we've covered lack of respect, why don't we cover a little bit of hypocrisy? Chi-Chi is apparently okay with Gohan taking time away from school to fight crime as the Great Saiyaman. He's apparently fine with that, but the idea of Gohan missing about a week of school to enter a tournament where he could win $10 million is apparently something she'd completely forbid. I mean, the hypocrisy is simple. Outside of the Z Fighters, no one at the tournament could give Gohan a run for his money. And, you know, tournament rules say that weapons are prohibited. When it comes to vigilantism, the vigilantes' foes are definitely going to be having weapons. I mean, they're fucking criminals, for crying out loud. Their main form of income comes from them breaking the law, which usually requires a gun, or a knife at least. I mean, Chi-Chi is so dumb that she apparently doesn't even see that Gohan has been given a golden opportunity, and she's willing to throw it away to lock him up in some dumbass high school. And this brings us to Dragon Ball Super. You know, the installment that, in a lot of opinions, including my own, was worse than Dragon Ball GT. You see, Goku and Vegeta were and always will be the MRAs of shonen anime. Or, in other words, they're the MRAs of anime heroes. This is the sequel where Chi-Chi insists that Goku gets a job. In fact, she wants him to take up farming. And I'm just gonna say it. This decision makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Yamcha playing baseball actually would make sense because after years of training, the guy has superhuman levels of physical stamina and superhuman strength. So it would be easy for him to hit a home run without even breaking a sweat. Krillin being a cop makes sense. I mean, he'd have to fight bank robbers and Bulma, who ends up speeding, and like Yamcha, he's had years of training. These crooks wouldn't really be a match for him. He'd be the best cop on the force. And the idea of Tien running a dojo makes perfect sense. Like Krillin and Yamcha, he's a martial artist with years of training under his belt. Not to mention, out of the three of them, he has the highest number of techniques. So it makes perfect sense. For those three I just mentioned, it makes sense. But for Goku, this is where the safety net disappears. It makes no sense. In fact, the only way it could make sense, because Goku is never really shown a talent for growing plants. I mean, the only way this could make sense would be as if this was from an alternate reality where Goku was human and grew up with his parents who were farmers and never went on any quest for the Dragon Balls, trained, or even liked to get into fights. And Goku actually does make a good point when he says that Majin Buu was really strong. He could never have taken him down on his own, which is technically true. He had to use the Super Spirit Bomb powered by everyone on Earth to kill the final incarnation of Majin Buu. So he does have to get training, especially since Dragon Ball Super has a whole host of villains, even stronger than Majin Buu. And here's the thing. I mean, athlete, cop, martial arts instructor, if Chi-Chi wants Goku to actually have a job, it should be something like that. In all fairness, for Chi-Chi's character, this is where the safety net disappears. I mean, I know she was overprotective with Gohan and wanted him to be a scholar, even though we see that he has a job in this series, and they don't even tell us what that job is, because that would be the writers kind of admitting that Chi-Chi was essentially a complete buffoon in Dragon Ball Z, but that's a point I'm going to bring up later. Here, this is where Chi-Chi goes from stupid but well-meaning to a brain-dead, gold-digging whore. Okay, Now, I know I'm going to rattle a lot of cages when I say this, but this is kind of where all the money came from. Essentially, from Hercule. In all fairness, although it was never said, it's kind of obvious that Hercule would do something like this to keep his reputation. I mean, keep Goku out of the Tenkaichi Budokai because Chi-Chi wants money by giving them money so Hercule doesn't get knocked out of the ring by Goku. In other words, Hercule is giving Goku the money to keep him from entering the World Tournament, making it to the finals, defeating him for the prize money just to shut Chi-Chi up. And, afterwards, if that had happened, Hercule's reputation would be in the toilet. So, it's kind of obvious he's the one who's been paying for the lifestyle of Goku and his family. And it would make even more sense because Goku goes off to train a lot in Dragon Ball Super. In fact, he goes off to train for so long that if Goku actually had a job and was bringing in income, well, with the amount of time he took off to train, then Goku's family would be broke at this point. I mean, they would have lost the house, Goten wouldn't be able to afford school, and Goku would have come back from the Tournament of Power to see Chi-Chi living on the streets and wearing rags. And now that you mention it, I mean, in all fairness, Goku knows nothing about radishes or farming. I mean, he hunted as a kid, but apparently that's not good enough for Chi-Chi when it comes to bringing home the bacon. And like I said before, the three potential career paths are better suited for Goku, and not to mention the idea of Goku knocking Mr. Satan off his throne would also be a better path for Goku, and it would be quite moral, as Mr. Satan only got where he is by taking the credit that rightfully belongs to both Goku and Gohan. And then there was the time that this idiot screwed her own family over buying stuff for Pan, who had just been born. Even though Gohan has a job, Chi-Chi had to play grandma and buy Pan a whole lot of stuff. And when I say a lot of stuff, I mean she blew all of the money that Hercule had given to Goku, Chi-Chi, and Goten. So in all fairness, Goku should have just told her if she wants money, she should get off her lazy ass and get a job. Dragon Ball Super Episode 17 is essentially where Chi-Chi's character died for the bulk of the fans. But in reality, her character died when this series started. When she decided that she was going to control Pan the way she controlled Gohan and Goten, and the way she thinks she controls Goku. Because in this episode, he basically just leaves to train with Whis and Vegeta. Now, the show tried to present Chi-Chi as someone who doesn't really know how the world works, but if you actually watch the show and you are a hardcore Dragon Ball fan, Chi-Chi is actually a person who doesn't seem to know how reality works. I mean, not only that, but she acts like a little, best metaphor. She acts like a little girl playing dolls. Like, deep inside her head, she's still a little girl, and everyone around her are her dolls. I'm pretty sure she intended to marry a farmer and essentially control the house like a spoiled princess. Played that scenario every day with dolls in her dollhouse, and that's why she is the way that she is. So, in all fairness, it is actually something that gets worse the more that you think about it. I mean, if Chi-Chi got her way, Frieza would have ended up destroying planet Earth before Season 3 of Dragon Ball Super even arose. And yes, I'm just gonna say it. Chi-Chi would be willing to throw the entire universe into the crapper and flush it just to live out her dumbass fantasy. And with the whole doll metaphor, it not only makes it sound like Chi-Chi both acts and thinks exactly like Sharah from Ed, and Eddy, but in all fairness, that is exactly how she's acting. Like a spoiled brat who's allowed to get away with murder and is never disciplined. The kind of spoiled brat who would let the end of the world happen just so she can continue getting her way. This is not the kind of character you want to see succeed. This is the kind of character you want to see get locked up in the closet and then forgotten about. And when I say locked in the closet and forgotten about, I actually meant to say locked in the attic and forgotten about. If anything, that's how the Universal Survival Saga should have happened. Goku should have just locked Chi-Chi in the attic and actually not lied. He should have been honest with everyone on the team except for Frieza, as he left Chi-Chi locked up in the attic for a course of 5 years until we get to the final storyline of Dragon Ball Z. Which brings me to my next point. And that's the fact that Chi-Chi is actually a massive hypocrite when it comes to martial arts. The thing is, not only did she know martial arts, but she fought Goku at the World Tournament, which is where he proposed to her. And it was only because if he said no, the crowd might have booed him. I don't really remember it that well. That may not have been the specifics of what happened in that episode. But here's the thing. Chi-Chi didn't want Gohan training. The only reason he learned to fight was because Piccolo kidnapped him after Goku sacrificed himself against Raditz. She suddenly doesn't want Goten training in Dragon Ball Super because, as we've established, Chi-Chi is kind of, committed to living out this deranged fantasy that she's played with her dolls every day as a child, even if it means the end of the world. I mean, she's against her sons and granddaughter training. At this point, it kind of comes off as if, in a weird way, it's like she's taking a dump on her heritage. And to be honest, it's, in a weird way, she also kind of takes a dump on Goku's heritage as well. And yes, I know that in Japan, delinquents bleach their hair just to piss their parents off, and Chi-Chi hates the Super Saiyan transformation because of how it makes Goku, Gohan, and Goten look in physical appearance. But in all fairness, you might want to leave that out of foreign dubs, because it makes it sound like Chi-Chi just hates Saiyans in general, and Super Saiyan, Super Saiyan 2, Super Saiyan 3, these forms have actually saved the universe on, I'd say a yearly basis. And when you look at parts of the timeline like the Babidi Saga, this form saved the world from multiple threats in 1 year. So it kind of destroys Chi-Chi's argument and makes her look like a brain-dead bitch who's just a racist and hates Saiyans. Okay, now it's time for a good old-fashioned metaphor. White girl dates a Hispanic boy who is Mexican and also likes playing tabletop RPGs. This woman was raised on the stereotype that all Mexicans are thugs and that all role-playing games are satanic. So she demands that he cut it out and give up playing D&D, which he does for around 5 years, but then she finds out that her husband is Mexican and basically throws a fit. She demands that he permanently give up playing D&D and any other form of tabletop game, forbids him to have any association with any of his old friends, especially the single ones, and makes him get a job at her father's restaurant despite not knowing how to cook, which her dad is secretly okay with him leaving. Replace the racist white woman with Chi-Chi, the Hispanic Mexican with Goku, and role-playing games or any tabletop game with martial arts, and you will instantly see how dysfunctional Goku and Chi-Chi's relationship is, along with seeing that Chi-Chi is almost a racist. And that her way of thinking is 100% toxic. And Chi-Chi is also a hypocrite in other ways. When she tries to plan out Pan's entire life in Dragon Ball Super Episode 17, she does it with a very feminist stance and feminist point of view. And it just makes me think, yeah, feminists hate housewives and are always berating women like the mother from Father Knows Best. And Chi-Chi is a lot like this woman. And it's clear that her resentment towards the idea of Pan knowing martial arts is yet, another metaphorical dump on her own heritage. Because, as we established, Chi-Chi is an idiot. It's very odd that Chi-Chi would take this feminist viewpoint, almost implying that it was okay for her to live life like this, but not her granddaughter. I'm just saying, yeah, she clearly views Goku and Hercule as being a corrosive poison, and that is disrespectful in a lot of ways. In all fairness, the house she lives in, obviously Goku built it. She did not buy it. And the truth is, if Goku divorced this bitch, her life would turn to shit, and I will touch on that later. But for now, Chi-Chi has become so toxic that not only is she saying that Goku's lifestyle is toxic, but she's saying that her own lifestyle is toxic, just because she wasn't allowed to cling on to this deranged fantasy. She's a grown woman, not a little girl. And therefore, she's too old to expect her reality to be like the inside of her old dollhouse. Now I'm gonna move on to how she treats Goku. I mean, even in Season 1 of Dragon Ball Z, she basically implied that Goku was a bum. She yells at him non-stop. At no point does she ever show him any kind of success whatsoever, and basically yells at him, saying that if Gohan takes so much as a minute off from his studies, then he'll turn out just like Goku, which she keeps going on and on about, and actually labels it a bad thing. This is not the kind of wife you want to provide for. This is the kind of bitch that you want to see living on the streets as a homeless person. In Dragon Ball Super, Episode 16, Goku he admits to Krillin that he tried to talk some sense into Chi-Chi about how Saiyans aren't exactly the day job type. They're warriors. And that Pan would have Saiyan blood. But Chi-Chi is not going to listen. I mean, it's bad enough that she held Gohan back and threw his potential out the window. Now she's doing the same thing to Goten, is trying to suppress Goku's potential, and she doesn't want Pan to have any at all. Not to mention the fact that she's potentially putting the world at risk in this episode. Just imagine what would have happened if Beerus appeared and the Super Saiyan God lost to him a second time. He'd most likely blow up the Earth. Because Chi-Chi doesn't like martial arts. I mean, she is so dead set on living this deranged fantasy that she would allow the God of Destruction to blow up the world and take countless lives just so she can live the way that she did when she was playing dolls as a 3-year-old. And this problem even goes back to episode 7 of Dragon Ball Z, No Time Like the Present. She actually thought that Goku and his friends were trying to teach Gohan martial arts. Pretty much, if Gohan wanted to learn how to fight, there would have been nothing wrong with that. But in this case, it was Piccolo, not Goku, who was dead at the time. Something of which her father is supportive of. And this is kind of an insight of how little respect she has for Goku and Master Roshi, and even her own father. She actually thinks that Goku is so dumb that he would throw Gohan into the ocean before Gohan would actually know how to swim. She also thinks that Goku is this heartless bastard who would leave their son on a deserted island, as well as a deserted island where Gohan gets bitten by a poisonous snake. This really shows how extremely little she thinks of Goku. And in the next episode, Gohan Goes Bananas, Chi-Chi kinda loses it when she goes to Master Roshi's island to pick Goku and Gohan up, and actually says that if Gohan doesn't study, he will become a homeless bum. Okay, Goku didn't do any of these things, and he's actually, by the end of Z, at that point in the timeline, far more successful than Gohan could ever be. She talks about Goku and his friends like they're a bunch of criminals, which kind of begs the question, why did she even agree to marry him? By the Piccolo Jr. saga, he had already forgotten she existed. She could have just gone on with her life, and nothing would have changed. If anything, every one of these complaints is Chi-Chi's fault. But knowing this bitch, she would not take any responsibility. She's the kind of woman who demands respect, but under no circumstances knows how to give respect to others. She expects them to not only show her respect, but do whatever she says, like her little dolls, but she doesn't show them one bit of respect. She deserves to be treated in this manner. Okay, now since I already got through how much of a bitch Chi-Chi was towards Goku, I'm going to essentially go over how she brainwashed Gohan. In Dragon Ball Z episode 118, Frieza's counterattack, Gohan, although he's been studying for a little over a year, non-stop, she hires a tutor because apparently Gohan was not meeting her insane expectations. And this image is the first we see of the guy. He's carrying a whip, which he does use on Gohan, essentially treating him like an animal while bad-mouthing Goku. I mean, I know Chi-Chi would be okay with this guy bad-mouthing Goku, but I know she's not okay with this jackass nerd whipping her son. And why would she even hire the guy and not kick him out the minute he arrived? I mean, he's holding the whip in hand. Is she so stupid and deranged that she does not see the whip and is completely distracted that this guy's a tutor? I mean, if a man comes to tutor your child and he has a whip with him, I'm pretty sure he's not the kind of tutor that any parent would want their child to have. And Chi-Chi, being the sack of crap that she is, basically throws this act of where she possibly could have gone wrong when in front of this guy, reinforcing the idea that Goku is basically a deadbeat who left his family. I mean, a lot of retards on the internet, mainly YouTube, basically say that Goku's a bad father. In this case, Chi-Chi is a terrible mother. If social services were around in the world of Dragon Ball, he'd be taken as far away from her as possible. I mean, this guy, we actually see him whip Gohan with a dog whip, like he's some kind of an animal. It's not played for humor. He's doing this to a 7-year-old. This is the kind of man that the Dragon Ball world would allow to be a tutor for a little kid. And the only reason he started whipping Gohan is because Gohan actually got 2 questions wrong and said that failure is actually an opportunity to learn from your mistakes. In all fairness, in a decently written series, yeah, Gohan caught the whip after his nightmare, but this would be the part where Gohan breaks Mr. Shu in half. This was the man who whipped him for making a comment that he labeled as backtalk. Mr. Shu is the kind of nerd who deserves to get his ass kicked by a bunch of buff alpha males on a regular basis. And I'm pretty sure the only reason Chi-Chi, hired him is because he's as crazy as she is. Not to mention the fact that she's okay with him bad-mouthing Goku, but not bad-mouthing Gohan. Because, even though outside the tournament, Gohan has pretty much done every single thing Goku ever did in the past. Well, okay, outside going Super Saiyan, but he will eventually do both of those things in the future. And when I say that Chi-Chi brainwashed Gohan, I mean that in the most literal sense. She actually has a device that she puts on him in his sleep to essentially cram his head with all the stuff in those books, and most likely other things, to essentially force Gohan to conform into acting the way she wants to, i.e., making him be another one of her dolls. Oddly enough, it's made by Capsule Corp. You honestly think Bulma could find a solution for this problem since she built the machine? Well, since her family's company built the machine, and maybe build one for Chi-Chi to make her less of a sack of crap, but I digress. Oh, and there is the odd question that if Chi-Chi is willing to try and brainwash Gohan, I can't believe she didn't try to brainwash Goku as well. I mean, I guess the fact that Goku's away all the time, either training or being dead, it plays a part into it, but yeah. And in Dragon Ball Z, The World's Strongest, we actually find out that Gohan secretly fantasizes about ditching the schoolwork and the studying and becoming a martial artist in his dreams. Or at least that one dream sequence that was also a musical number. And okay, now I'm going to tackle the really big argument that for some reason every moron in the Dragon Ball fandom has been going on and on about. The fact that Chi-Chi held Gohan back. No, it is true. She held him back. I mean, Gohan wanted to be a scholar at the beginning because Chi-Chi brainwashed him into it and did not give him a choice. We actually do see Gohan's day job in Dragon Ball Super. But here's the thing. They never tell us what it is. And the thing about that is, I'm pretty sure the writers already heard this criticism online, and that's why they don't say what his job is. I mean, it doesn't matter how high up in the company he is in Season 2 of Dragon Ball Super, because there is always someone above him, the CEO. Someone who could fire Gohan or demote him to a very low-level position within the company on a whim. And for all we know, Gohan's job could very well be Donut Boy. Just some guy who delivers them their snacks. Where on the other hand, if Gohan started entering all these different tournaments, he'd have more money than almost anyone in the series. He'd be the second richest character on the show outside of the Briefs family. In the two-parter where a studio was making a Great Saiyaman movie, Gohan actually gets slightly offended when Jocko refers to him as Goku's underachieving son. And I'm thinking, no, that's fully accurate. Gohan is an underachiever compared to his dad. His dad can actually go Super Saiyan God, and achieve a level beyond that. Well, on the other hand, Gohan in this series has been so useless that in the saga that this takes place in, he doesn't even fight. In the saga before that, he didn't fight either. In the saga before that, he couldn't even go beyond Super Saiyan, and Piccolo had to take a fatal blow to keep Gohan alive. So yeah, Jocko's words may hurt, but they're more than accurate. You know, it's hard to believe Gohan didn't grow up as a troubled kid, because as we were shown in The World's Strongest, Gohan actually does have somewhat of a desire to ditch the books and train with Piccolo. Something that he was able to do non-stop for 3 whole years, right after his idiot mom hired this asshole to tutor him, and this insane buffoon, who's as dumb as Chi-Chi is, saw fit to whip Gohan. He's literally whipping a 7-year-old with no remorse whatsoever. Literally thinking that he's doing something good by essentially committing child abuse. Just take a look at the pissed off look on Gohan's face. He wants to kick this guy's ass so badly. And in all fairness, if Dragon Ball Z was a little bit more realistic, this would be Gohan's breaking point. This would be the point where, after bringing his dad back, he would agree to train, but completely refuse to study. I mean, Piccolo may have been hard on him, but he was eventually kind to him. Mr. Shu, on the other hand, basically pulls out the whip the minute Gohan makes a mistake on one of his tests, and actually says that making a mistake is actually an opportunity to learn something, which is true. And I know they say that Gohan didn't like fighting, but the minute he reached a new level of Super Saiyan, he was very happy to kick Cell's ass. And the fact that he wants to train with Piccolo, as seen in the dream sequence, means that he must like it to an extent. And he did get that pep talk from 16, but that was more or less just to get him to this level of power. And it was essentially Goku's plan for the fight to play out this way. And morally speaking, Gohan should ditch the books and enter the World Tournament and knock Mr. Satan off his high horse. You know, because he got rich and famous for taking credit for a battle that Gohan won. Which brings me to the obvious. Chi-Chi goes on and on about how smart Gohan is. But with this great Saiyaman thing, he was blackmailed twice. Well, actually 3 times. Once was a misunderstanding. The second time was to force him to enter the tournament. And the third time was in Dragon Ball Super. Logic dictates that if Gohan is getting blackmailed this easily, he's not as smart as Chi-Chi thinks he is. And Super I'm sure the writers made that apparent by not saying what he does for a living, or what his position is, because they've heard these arguments, I'm sure, and it would basically prove the fan base who thinks Chi-Chi's an idiot 100% right. If anything, the only reason why Gohan went back to studying in the 7 years after the defeat of Cell was just to shut his mother up. But if Dragon Ball Z was a bit more realistic, Gohan would have matured and would have stuck to his training, and when his mother started screaming like a lunatic, Gohan would have just left. He could have just stayed at the lookout for 7 years, training, and in the Majin Buu saga, Buu wouldn't have been revived. Well, Buu might not have been revived, but I'm pretty sure they would have revived Goku for Battle of Gods. And I understand the whole Gohan doesn't wanna hurt people, but if he's as smart as Chi-Chi is always saying he is, then I'm pretty sure Gohan could invent his own fighting style that he could use to enter the world tournament that would involve him winning with a ring out and not needing to inflict any damage on his opponent. Just fling him out of the ring. I mean, it's just that simple. Grab the opponent, pick the opponent up, throw the opponent out of the ring, or force them out of the ring. It's very simple. The fact that Gohan didn't come up with this strategy and use it in a tournament to get back at Mr. Satan kinda makes Gohan out to be really stupid and makes Chi-Chi look like a nearly retarded bad mother. Not to mention the fact that it makes Android 16's sacrifice in the Cell Game saga look like a completely pointless waste of time and effort. I mean, that was the event that gave Gohan the power to beat Cell. In all fairness, I'm just gonna say it. Gohan should have come to the epiphany of the balance between studying and training after killing Cell. And if Chi-Chi disapproved, then Gohan just should have left, moved to Kami's Lookout. If they ever needed money, him and Piccolo could enter the world tournament, do this for 7 years, and wait for Babidi to show up. The fact that this didn't happen kinda makes it look like Gohan is by no means as smart as Chi-Chi makes him out to be, as the prize money for the world tournament that we see in the Babidi saga was at least, well, I don't remember it, but it was at least $100 million. I mean, they don't tell us how much Gohan makes, or even what he does in Super, because the writers, I'm sure they saw this critique or ones like it on the internet, and they knew that's why they could not bring up what Gohan does for a living or how much he makes. And here's the thing. Gohan not getting this mindset until Dragon Ball Super actually portrays him as being as greedy and money obsessed as his retarded mother. And right before I get on to my next point about Gohan's brother Goten, I'm just going to throw in the fact that Gohan was told what happened to his counterpart in the future timeline. Him not using this as leverage to let Chi-Chi, or in this case force her to let him train, actually makes Gohan himself, you know, the one who studies and is a bookworm, not telling her this makes him look like a complete bozo. Okay, I already now went over all the things Chi-Chi did to screw over Gohan. Now let's see all the things she did to screw over Goten. As of Dragon Ball Super, she demanded that Goten study non-stop and wouldn't allow him to go outside and play anymore. During the Tournament of Power, Goten wanted to ditch the books and train with Goku. The only reason he had the balls to say it was because, unlike Gohan, Goten was actually given a choice and was allowed to experience freedom. And if Chi-Chi, the terrible mother that she is, actually let Goten train with his father and Vegeta on Beerus's homeworld, he most likely would have unlocked Super Saiyan God and would have gotten strong enough to defeat Trunks, Majin Buu, and everyone else who was left in the World Tournament right after Goku left with Oob, and would have been able to pull the same stunt that Android 18 pulled in the Babidi Saga, instead of getting his butt kicked by his own niece. Okay, and as much as this is going to rattle a lot of people's cages, it's time that I kind of address the ending of Dragon Ball Z as well as Dragon Ball GT, which is canon. Oh, and for all those buffoons who go on and on saying, oh, it wasn't in the manga, there was a Dragon Ball GT manga printed. And guess what? Like the Dragon Ball Super manga, it came out after the release of the anime. GT is canon. Get over it. And in Dragon Ball GT, it's actually established that Goku does not have a job, and never did. And for all you idiots who still don't think Dragon Ball GT is canon, it did get its own manga, and I could use the existence of these two movies to essentially make the argument that nothing that we saw in Dragon Ball Super is canon. Hell, there was even a fan theory on Reddit that said Dragon Ball Super is not canon and nothing in it is canon to the franchise. Oh, and on the topic of the manga, we never actually see Frieza get resurrected and invade Earth in the manga. It's only alluded to on a couple of pages. So, for all we know, Resurrection F probably happened the way it did in the last Dragon Ball Z movie. Okay, And now I want to talk about Chi-Chi's character development. From what we see of her in the end of Dragon Ball Z and in GT, she clearly has calmed down and slightly matured. But here's the thing. It's kind of obvious that she did go through character development, but it all happened off screen. After everything Goku had to go through, scamming his wife into thinking that he had a job and was playing along with her deranged fantasies, we never got to see Chi-Chi get the character development and realize that she's been acting like a child and a spoiled brat for, I have to say, over a decade. Dragon Ball Super could have easily done this, and it would have been a moment that actually shines. You know, since Dragon Ball Z is a shonen anime, and therefore its target demographic is men and boys. Men and boys don't really like the way Chi-Chi acts. So if we actually saw the catalyst for her character development, it would be great. It would be a hit. It would be very successful. But the idiots who were writing it, they chose to ignore it. And then there's the fact that Goku should have taught Chi-Chi a lesson. And I mean something more than, oh, sorry honey, I was just faking it and pretending to have a job. And also being turned into a little kid in GT wouldn't count either, cause Goku didn't plan that one. That was all Pilaf's doing. And when I say Goku should have taught Chi-Chi a lesson, I'm referring to the fact that divorce is actually Goku's weapon. I mean, Chi-Chi could not land herself a new husband, and she'd probably end up going 100% broke without, the money that was obviously coming from Hercule, because he was giving it to Goku. All Goku would have to do is threaten to divorce her, leave, tell her he's going to Kame House to talk to both Master Roshi and Yamcha, two men known for being notorious pervs, to ask them if they can help him find a divorce lawyer, and I'm pretty sure Chi-Chi would essentially bend the knee after 24 hours and Goku has not come back. I mean, if anything, that's probably how they would have done it, but unfortunately we don't get to see that, because it's the morons who were writing Dragon Ball Super after all. And while I'm on this topic, might as well throw Marin in, because Chi-Chi hates her, to the extent where she was almost willing to beat her up the first time they met. I mean, when Chi-Chi actually does show up, or at least shows up to yell at Goku, I mean, Goku could just trick Marin into showing up at Kame House to basically throw the scare into Chi-Chi's head that Goku would leave her for Marin by seeing Marin flirt with Goku, seeing that and knowing that since her dad had been supporting them for all these years, and knowing how much money Marin will blow through in a week, Chi-Chi would actually end up bending the knee a lot faster. In the sense that this event would make it clear that Goku can easily find a new wife. She cannot. And that's assuming that she doesn't end up with custody of Goten, because that also scares men away. Single mothers, not really good when it comes to dating, because that scares men away. Have them interact and make it obvious that Goku's not going to let Chi-Chi beat up Marin. Have an interaction between Marin and Goten where she really likes him. And yeah, Chi-Chi will break down and bend the knee on the spot. Because after over a decade of acting like an immature brat and expecting Goku to play along with her deranged fantasies, I mean, like he's a doll in her dollhouse, Chi-Chi would then complete her character arc and realize that Goku can do better than her. She'll break down instantly and promise that everything will go back to normal. Goku will reveal that he was just pretending to have a job, and then Chi-Chi will promise that everything will go back to the way it was before, and she will be okay with getting money from Hercule in exchange for Goku not humiliating him at the World Tournament. At one point, either in the anime or the manga, Chi-Chi is compared to Launch. Here's the thing. Launch's blonde form was meant to be unlikable. She was meant to be a psycho bitch who would have to learn to care about others. Kind of mirroring how Chi-Chi, in this case, might have to learn that Goku is not human, he's an alien, and an alien species that has needs outside of what she was trying to become. But here's the thing. Blonde Launch, like I said, she was meant to be hated. I mean, Chi-Chi is just an idiot. She doesn't really understand how reality works, and is the kind of character who would have to go through a character arc, at least until the end of Z, which is the only character arc in the franchise that we don't see. And if you remember this episode in Dragon Ball Super, where Chi-Chi goes from being conservative to liberal, yeah, it kind of gives off the implication that if she had any influence on Pan, that this girl would end up definitely becoming the new Launch. I mean, Chi-Chi would have nailed it into Pan's head that money is everything, and it would be impossible to think with grandfathers like Goku and Hercule, and a grandfather who has a rival like Vegeta, that she would never find out about the Saiyan's true potential, and like Launch, would eventually turn to a life of crime. essentially harming whoever she can to get that money. The money that her idiot grandmother told her was so incredibly precious to her future. Well, she wouldn't have directly said it, but hinted at it, as in, studying leads to a good job, which leads to being financially stable. Pan probably would have put two and two together, that since she's a quarter Saiyan, has amazing fighting prowess, she wouldn't need to go through the boring studying or have a job other than being a thief. She could just take what she wants. No one on the police force would be strong enough to stop her. And she most likely would have been brought down by one of the Z fighters. And that's why I draw this Chi-Chi to launch comparison. I mean, Goku's influence on Pan is fine. Chi-Chi's influence on Pan could have easily turned her into a criminal. But here's the thing. Blonde launch, like I said, she was meant to be hated. I mean, Chi-Chi is just an idiot. She doesn't really understand how reality works, and is the kind of character who would have to go through a character arc, at least until the end of Z, which is the only character arc in the franchise that we don't see. Say what you will about Blonde Launch, she didn't have any negative influence on Gohan, Goten, or Pan. She didn't even have a bad influence. Well, she didn't even affect Goku's life negatively. I know a lot of people online say that Goku should have married Launch. Well, some people do. Some people on this site have put up what-if scenarios about that, and I definitely see where they're coming from. Launch is definitely better than Chi-Chi, and Toriyama should have never dropped her from the series. She, in a sense, is kind of a better version of Chi-Chi when you think about it. The blonde version. With the good blue-haired Launch essentially being everything Chi-Chi expected to become and everything she hypocritically thinks that she is. It's kind of too bad that Toriyama dropped this character, because she would have been a way better influence on Gohan, Goten, and Pan, as well as having being a better presence in Goku's life than Chi-Chi could ever have done or could ever be. And now I want to focus this to the topic, well, of Goku and whether or not he's a good father. Actually, Goku is not irresponsible or a bad father, the way a lot of the idiots on the internet think he is. In Dragon Ball Z Dead Zone, the minute Goku found out that Garlic Jr. and his thugs had kidnapped Gohan, he instantly flies there on the Nimbus Cloud, defeats two really strong fighters, and then he fought their boss, who was over twice as strong as he was at the time, thus risking his own life to save the life of his son, even if it was his son who ended up saving the day in the first place. Not Chi-Chi. She got her butt kicked, and Gohan got kidnapped. And in a way, this is also another point about how Chi-Chi is a bad mother for not letting Gohan train. Because you never know. If she did, there's a chance that this scenario actually might have been avoided. And despite all her talk of Goku being a brainless thug, he actually was the one to think of using the Dragon Radar to find Gohan. If they had done this Chi-Chi's way, they would have never gotten him back. In Dragon Ball Z Episode 3, after Gohan was kidnapped by Raditz, Goku instantly got up, more than ready to fight. Even willing to team up with Piccolo, who did not go through his redemption arc yet, to do so. For all Goku knew, this whole thing was probably a trap, and Piccolo could have easily ended up switching sides, and him and Raditz would have ended up killing him. And this was after Raditz took Goku down with one hit. In the 5th episode, this fight comes to a climax when Goku sacrifices himself, essentially to kill Raditz. And that was right before Raditz was about to kill Gohan. So I'm pretty sure this makes Goku a pretty good dad. If Goku did what Chi-Chi assumed he would do, Gohan would most likely be dead at this point. Now I'm gonna rattle off some points where Goku was away and therefore couldn't be with his family, because that's one of the biggest criticisms that this man is hit with. Starting with his first death at the hands of Raditz. Now, if Goku didn't sacrifice himself, Raditz not only would have killed Gohan, but he would have killed everyone on Earth. And if he was somehow stopped, Nappa and Vegeta would have been the ones to show up and cause the apocalypse. Goku decided to stay behind on planet Namek in order to fight Frieza, because he wanted to make sure that Frieza was properly defeated. After Namek's explosion, Goku spent a year and a half training on Yardrat, which is important because if Goku didn't learn the instant transmission, Cell would have eventually vaporized the planet. You see, Goku has a very Saiyan way of parenting. He knew that this is kind of what it would come down to, and that he would have to martyr himself. He also discovered that Gohan was the only one who would be able to kill Cell, so he trained him to do so in the hyperbolic time chamber. Thus, he kind of saved Gohan's life by allowing him to get to the level he did during the final Kamehameha clash with Cell. And Goku's decision to stay dead actually was a good one. If Goku let his friends and family revive him, there's a chance he wouldn't have learned Super Saiyan 3, and fusion definitely would have been out of the question, meaning that either Majin Buu or Broly would have ended up destroying the planet. And Goku's decision to train under Whis actually solved a lot of problems and saved the Earth several times. One, it prevented Beerus from returning and blowing the planet up. Two, it gave Goku the power he needed to defeat the resurrected Frieza. 3, it helped fight off Goku Black and Zamasu. 4, this training essentially was what allowed Goku to last as long against Jiren as he did in the Tournament of Power. And 5, if Goku and Vegeta didn't train under Whis and attain Super Saiyan Blue, they just would have been killed by Broly if they somehow managed to get to the events of Dragon Ball Super Broly without using Super Saiyan God. To put it bluntly, Goku is a very good father. Chi-Chi is actually the bad parent here, as her stupidity would have... if any of these guys listened to her, Earth would have been vaporized in Dragon Ball Z's very first season. And in all fairness, Toriyama should have just wrote Chi-Chi to smile, nod, and cook meals. That might be considered a little bit sexist, but that would have made Chi-Chi a way better character than she actually is. This woman is like the buffoon in your typical superhero parody, who applies real-world logic to whatever comic book type scenario that the main characters are facing. Chi-Chi is the woman who would probably call the cops if she saw a horde of Black Lanterns ripping up her neighborhood. It's not going to do any good. If anything, it'll just add to the Black Lantern's numbers. Or expect Goku to get a job while Doomsday was tearing up the planet. If anything, I could see Chi-Chi trying to get Goku to get a job in the same city that Doomsday was currently ripping apart. That's how stupid she is. She's like something straight out of the Powerpuff Girls. Or the Tick. Now, you're probably thinking that I'm going a little overboard on Chi-Chi here. But here's something that I usually bring up on this show, and that's, what if the genders were reversed? After all, there have been several lunatic feminists on the internet talking about how horrible Dragon Ball Z is and how it's filled with toxic masculinity. And that one idiot who said that Goku shouldn't even be on Earth, she created that fan theory before fan theories actually existed, or in this case were mainstream. And Toriyama did prove her wrong by saying the version of Earth in Champa's universe didn't have a version of Goku and was essentially destroyed by war, i.e. the Red Ribbon Army. But I wonder how people would react to a Rule 63 Dragon Ball, or something akin to a Rule 63 Dragon Ball. Let's say that there's a show that is almost a gender-swapped Dragon Ball about a heroine with only one weakness. Her husband knows what that weakness is, but after over a decade of his wife going on adventures, he kind of gets pissed off that she never has time to cook or clean, even though he's been providing money for them. Let's say the love interest was actually raised on not only every sitcom after 1987, but Leave It to Beaver and Father Knows Best as well. And one day, his wife's heroism eventually causes him to snap, and he basically breaks out her one and only weakness and demands that if she doesn't start cooking and cleaning, that he's going to use it to torture her, because he has a very successful job and had been bringing home the bacon for years, and she has essentially done nothing of use ever. So she actually has to pretend that she's, going to cook his meal, essentially making her a more heroic version of Peggy Bundy. Actually going so far as to make her ditch her traditional combat outfit and wear a dress, apron, and heel. I guarantee you that if anyone made a show like that, Twitter would lose its goddamn mind. Not only would everyone on the platform go absolutely batshit crazy, but they wouldn't stick to Twitter. They would literally form a lynch mob and go after whoever wrote the latest season of this hypothetical show and personally lynch them one at a time. And if the hypothetical portrayal that I just described to you is unacceptable, then the way Chi-Chi treats Goku is even worse. Now, it's no secret that Akira Toriyama wanted to end Dragon Ball at Z. And there's a chance, most likely subconsciously, that Toriyama destroyed Chi-Chi's character and made her a massive bitch on purpose, but completely subconsciously, in hopes that her terrible behavior would be enough to drive the fans away, and he could work on something else. I'm not saying that's the case, but there is always a chance that Toriyama subconsciously wanted the series to fail so he could work on something else, and put Goku and Chi-Chi in a toxic relationship to make it happen.